Before we begin, a very late but very appreciated thank you to Super Striker 7 for contributing to my Patreon campaign over at patreon.com/, TJOmega. Thank you very much. The support is always appreciated. If you'd like to chip in even $1 a month, I'd be thrilled with. You can go to the description to find out where to do that. Or if you want to support the channel for free, just hit like and hit subscribe. That's pretty much as simple as it is. It is officially the 25th anniversary of Beast Wars. We recently celebrated the anniversary of the show's first official debut. Okay, there's a preview, but then like the full series debuted, very recently to when I'm recording this video. You get my point. It's been 25 years. Long time for a franchise, and there's a whole lot of stuff about the franchise that you may or may not have heard of. So, just as a fun little thing for the Beast Wars anniversary, I thought we'd go over 10 little things that I've been discovering about Beast Wars that you may not have heard of. Now, some of these are pretty common. We know of them a lot, and they've been talked about in the fandom. But others, yeah, they kind of go out there, and you need to do some deep digging on TF Wiki to find them. I've already done that work for you. So we're gonna get the common stuff out of the way first, just in case you hadn't heard it, and then we're gonna get into some weird ones. So the first one I'm going to tell you about is the missing episode, which this is probably the most common one we know of, but there's some people who are still not aware. There was an episode of Beast Wars where during Dinobot's, just kind of like talking to himself phase in season 2, we can see him uploading something into the Maximal computer straight out of his systems. And we never really got a follow-up on that. Well, the follow-up was a recording of his memories, and they were supposed to be snuck into Beast Transmetal 2 Dinobot by a rat trap who was kind of longing for his old friend. This was an episode called Dark Glass, and it was going to be a semi-return of Dinobot just in the body of Dinobot 2. So a little bit of familiar Rat Trap versus Dinobot, love-hate relationship. And they scrapped it. They unfortunately scrapped the episode because it's just a character episode. It didn't really do anything plot-wise. And it's really tragic because the finale of Beast Wars kind of depends on that. That's why Dinobot 2 started acting more like Dinobot. So, no, it messed a few things up. But more importantly, we're out a really good character episode. I'm still hoping there's some way we can adapt that. Because the actors are still around, comic books are a thing. I kind of want to see it. Next up, did you know the mutant heads were almost animated into the series? The original idea behind the mutant heads was they would kind of be the default head to get this new organic aesthetic for the Transformers across, but you would still have a robot within because it had an angular robotic head that was an alternative. And it almost made it into the show. The only trick there was the Beast Wars show, famously did not have much of a budget, so they didn't really have a way of working it in. They just stuck with one head or the other. So Rhinox, Cheetor, Rat Trap Rat Trap didn't have one, but Rhinox, Cheetor, the Deluxes, and they had their normal heads, and then you had figures like Waspinator and Tarantulas that used their mutant heads. Interesting little dynamic, but in the original prototype models that we first saw of the show, this is all behind the scenes stuff on DVDs, you can see that the mutant heads are actually animated in. And for some of them, it's the default look. Dinobot, for instance, has that big a dino skull dome thing hat that he had. So how different would Beast Wars have been if that had actually made it all the way through? Thankfully, it did not. I'm happy with what we got. Speaking of Waspinator, turns out that writers were really eager to kill him off. The problem with Waspinator, at least from a writing standpoint, is the particular tone and vocal tick that he goes for is so long and drawn out that it actually hurts the runtime of the show. They tried very hard not to give Waspinator too much dialogue because it could cause them to edit the episode a little bit, unfortunately, as we will say. And the writers absolutely hated this. This was just this one way that Waspinator had to talk was throwing everything off. So, when the season 1 finale happened and Pterosaur and Scorponok ate it, Waspinator was supposed to as well. But by then, they found out how much fans actually loved the poor, unfortunate Waspinator and decided, okay, we'll keep him around for comic relief. And yeah, good thing they did. Hall of Fame worthy character now, at least as far as a fan vote goes. Kind of weird to think that like such a beloved character was almost killed just because of the writer's convenience, but that's what happens in show production sometimes. Here's another concept that got budgeted out. We weren't supposed to have Tigatron at all. Instead, the Maximal that was supposed to join them in the first Stasis Pod episode was Wolfang. We were supposed to get a completely new design and completely new character out of it. And instead, we got an upscaled and modified Cheetor. We did that because, like I said, the show famously had a very small budget. So they didn't have enough money to make a completely new model from the ground up. So instead, we got Tigatron. And I really like Tigatron, but this is one of those changes where I feel like we missed out on something because I would have loved to have seen some more variety in the cast and seen like Wolfang be like the major thing. Tigatron's cool. A wolf probably would have been cooler. It's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate. Like I really wish that show had a little bit more budget going for it, but at the time Transformers was not really a proven property anymore, so I can kind of understand. Speaking of unfortunate things, did you know the saddest scene in all of Beast Wars was actually the funniest? So, this is a story that I get told a lot at MetroCon because it's something Scott McNeil likes to talk about a lot, or more specifically, people love to ask about this scene, and it's Dinobot's death scene. They really, really wanted this to be overly dramatic. They wanted it to be touching. Tell it to the rest of the voice cast, who, during this Shakespearean monologue that Dinobot is going through, uh, the cast reportedly was just laughing it up the entire time, like because this was just so hammy and cheesy. It's literally Hamlet, so it is hammy. It Scott at one point through the different takes turns to his cohorts and goes, do you mind? I'm trying to die here. I want the backstage footage so bad. I wish I was a fly on the wall. I wish I could see it. But also between Scott's uh, performances and just the general like silliness of the cast, yeah, I could easily imagine that too. From that, let's go back to Tigatron, and I'm going to tell you about a makeover that he and Tarantulas had. So, one of the problems in the first run of Beast Wars is when you're doing so many animals and you're trying to get realistic animal tones out of everything, you're going to hit a lot of common colors in nature, in this case, brown. They had a lot of figures at the time, Rhinox, Rat Trap, even Cheetor, considering, to a yellow tone where if they had done everything in Beast Wars to show or real life accurate designs, everything was going to look really similar on the toy shelf. So some sacrifices had to be made. Tigatron, for instance, was going to be an orange and teal tiger. He looked like a normal tiger. So imagine how weird that would have been, where we would have been in like the jungles, meeting Tigatron instead of the Arctic regions. So it would have been a little bit different. But then Tarantulas also was supposed to be a brown tarantula, like you'd expect a tarantula to be. And it was supposed to be translucent brown too. Actually, if you look on the original packaging photos, you can still see that the traces of what Tarantulas was supposed to be. I'm happy for that change because the Tarantulas we have is unique and very, very good looking. And I don't think he really would have had nearly as much impact or been nearly as creepy if he was just, like an all brown spider. Like as creepy as a giant spider is, you know. And I will admit, Tarantulas' animation colors do look a little silly in the beast mode. just with like the yellow stripes down the legs and all that. But for what we got, I think I definitely think it's an improvement. Just because I think I'd get bored of just a brown spider. Next up, it turns out that Beast Wars was actually supposed to be Generation 1 Part 2, and in a way it is. Canonically, it happens 300 years after the end of the Great War. However, it was supposed to go farther than that. Optimus Primal and Megatron were originally supposed to be the original G1 Megatron and the original G1 Optimus Prime, just in completely new bodies. You can see that on the back of the original boxes where the bios clearly kind of like feel like the G1 characters, a little modified for the sake of the new style of the toys, but definitely feels like it was meant to be the originals, which starts to make you wonder about Beast Wars characters like Grimlock, Ironhide, Prowl. Those later on got retconned into being the original G1 characters reformatted. And the package bio for Grimlock actually does kind of hint to that. So technically, he's the only canonical one in the series that's like that. That actually like implies that like, oh yeah, this is G1 Grimlock. He's just in a new body. But for Optimus and Megatron, you can definitely see it in their bios, and I'm so happy they didn't do that. It does create some weirdness, like why someone else can be named Megatron when Megatron was like the most infamous war criminal in Cybertron history. But that also makes some interesting character possibilities. Some, like comic books and all that, do great things with that, and then others, you know, Netflix shows don't do a good job with that problem. But point being, we almost had just another iteration of G1, and thankfully we did not, so we could enjoy something completely fresh and completely original. Speaking of fresh and original, let's talk about the repaint line in Japan. This is Transformers TJOmega, which of course most collectors know about. It's the original toys. It's their version of the 10th anniversary repaint line that we got, except they went all out with the repaints, so they looked as close to animation model as they could get. At least we kind of thought. Well, no. This one actually did have the Megatron that was like super repainted. However, that was not going to be the end of it. They were actually considering doing brand new Beast Wars toys for this figure line, and that is what I was really excited for and really disappointed we didn't get. Apparently, Takara had drafted designs for a jellyfish, a manticore, and weirdly enough, a trifid, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Basically, a mobile, like a walking carnivorous plant. That's fictional, by the way. That's fictional, by the way. Don't go looking for one as a pet. And they were really unique designs too, and especially the beast modes are just so weird and almost like disappointingly the Manticore. Mm, I really was upset. The Beast Wars never went into mythical creatures outside of like the occasional dragon, because that would have led to some really cool opportunities and some super cool beast modes. But it is what it is. We almost got brand new and really weird Beast Wars toys in the TJOmega line. Unfortunately, just did not do well enough to justify that. I mean, it didn't do well enough to even get all of Tripledacus out. So that's a loss, unfortunately. We're wrapping up here, so the double shot we are going to talk about the Vok, because one of these is common and one of these is kind of uncommon, and this was like a really bizarre discovery for me. So first off, we are going to acknowledge that the Vok are the Swarm from the final run of original Transformers comics, the finale of G2. If you didn't read those comics, the Swarm is basically just this cloud of sentient particles that are devouring everything in their path, including every Cybertronian. The death toll in the final issues of that comic book series are astronomical, and when you look it up, it turns out the Beast Wars writers actually took inspiration from the original comic book line for a lot of the elements they peppered into the series. Things like establishing like Primus and all that. And one of the things about the Vok was they were intended to be an evolved version of the Swarm. The Swarm was defeated by Optimus when he gave them the wisdom of the Matrix. So the Vok were apparently on prehistoric Earth to amend for their sins. And that's what the experimentation was all about. They were trying to improve our planet. And why were they trying to do that? Well, this is the top one, and this is one I have to finish on because it's so freaking weird. The Beast Wars writers interpreted the invasion of the Vok on Earth as a complete apocalypse. Beast Wars was actually a post-apocalyptic cartoon happening in the past, because the way the writers interpreted the Swarm in the G2 comic books, according to them, they wiped everything out. They wiped out every city. They wiped out every person. This is a barren planet, and the only ones who were saved in all this were the Transformers themselves. If I remember the comic book correctly, the only city I remember them like completely devouring was San Francisco. I don't remember them devouring the entire world. I definitely do not remember that. But for whatever reason, that's the way the writers wanted to interpret it. And I don't know why they felt that tidbit was necessary to drop, because it doesn't come up anywhere in the fiction for any reason whatsoever outside of why aren't there any humans on like Cybertron, or why don't they talk about humans more? Because, well, I mean, they're not around in 300 years. But yeah, it's just a super, like, I hate to go out on a morbid note, but it's also like the most shocking revelation about Beast Wars and what went into the original writing process that I could possibly come up with. But, that's not in the show, so interpret it your own way. Things that are mentioned after the fact aren't generally canonical. They're just tidbits. So I leave this tidbit with you, and I will call it a video here. Thank you very much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button. It helps me so, so much. You have no idea. And I really want to hit the one goal as a YouTuber I want is that play button. So the more you hit that, the more that happens. I thank you for it. So, I don't know what the next random video I come up with is going to be. So, stay tuned. I'll see you in the next one.